Hey, Warpugs. So, we're going to be taking a look at the oldest request in the 40k request list today, and this was requested by 00 back in November. There's 360 requests, guys. Yeah. This is the evolution of Magnus and Russ, and has Magnus changed his mind? This was done by Lord Rho. Lord Rho really likes to expand on points of the books and the lore, and he does a lot of theory craft, which I really enjoy. So, we're going to jump into this. I don't think Magnus has changed his mind. There may be an instance or two where he has, well, not fully on Russ in any case, but I do think that there's a lot to be said for what's gone on between the two. Depending on who writes Russ, he's either a genius or an idiot. It's really come down to that. It's kind of like the Alpha Legion in that regard, where they're either written brilliantly or written like Dick Dastardly, which is the absolute truth, and I will fight anyone who says otherwise. Here we go. We're going to get into this, though. I hope you guys enjoy. Let's go. Lord Rho.
Hey everyone, Lord Rho here. Today we discuss the evolving relationship of Leman Russ and Magnus the Red. General spoiler warning to begin, as the events we're discussing today are from across the Warhammer 40k universe. As always, I really recommend you read the stories for yourself first, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself, without spoilers. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. The Primarchs and their egos, the Primarchs and their rivalries.
Yes.
The two will forever go hand in hand. The truth is, the Primarchs excelled not despite their temperaments, but because of them. Indeed, the Emperor and Malkador encouraged the Primarchs to compete against each other, feeling that it would only further the Crusade's glory. And so it's no wonder some rivalries became ingrained.
Very much so.
Some exceeded even the Emperor's desires. Some have lasted the passage of time.
And some were entirely one-sided.
For me, none more so than Magnus the Red and Leman Russ. Over the years of the Heresy series, we have seen the full breadth of the Magnus Russ feud. Within the novel A Thousand Suns by author Graham McNeill, we saw the brothers at perhaps their height, prosecuting the crusade together within the Arc-Reach cluster. Already the tension between the two evident, serving within the same campaign for 6 months before meeting each other face to face. However, the ties of the Primarchs were there, as we saw from Ahriman witnessing their reunion, as Russ mocked Magnus's feathered cloak and Magnus Russ's wolf pelt. It resorted to the two Primarchs jibing about killing the other. On the face of it, something unbelievable. However, we got this passage from Ahriman's view. Ahriman was horrified by this exchange. Then he saw the faintest smirk on Russ's lips, and a glint of mischief in his Primarch's glittering amber eye. He let out a tense breath, sensing a familiar pattern to their argumentative banter. There was no love lost between the brothers, even then, but there was enough, their shared heritage uniting them. Unfortunately, it would be the same campaign that would see their relationship sour, with Magnus preventing a force of space wolves from destroying a Xeno library, eager as always to claim the knowledge for himself. The encounter eventually leading to a confrontation between the Primarchs, only stopped by the intervention of their brother Lorgar. But the damage was done. The seeds of Nicaea planted, and the vow of a reckoning made. Of course, that reckoning would be a famous one, with the burning of Prospero, the Wolf King shattering his brother's spine across his knee. For all the hatred that would come from the fight, Russ did appeal to his brother beforehand to avoid bloodshed, as we saw from the novel Prospero Burns by author Dan Abnett. Incorrectly believing Magnus had a spy aboard his vessel, Russ spoke to this man as he would his brother, extending an offer of peace. I'm talking to you as a personal courtesy, extended from one brother to another. What is about to happen should not be happening. You know I do not want this. You know it tears my heart to commit against you. It was perhaps the last brotherly thought that would be extended between the two, even if it...
I can't really be on Leman Russ's side in this. Like, Leman Russ caused a lot more strife than... I've often compared Leman Russ to that frat boy in any college that thinks he can whip the world and has an overinflated opinion of himself. And then, like, so one of my favorite skits of all time is Bro Down, the Bro Down one. And so it's the skit basically is about how to start a bro fight as a drunken idiot. And essentially at the end of it, the guy that has been causing all the problems is sitting down listening to the Goo Goo Dolls song Iris and talking about how, basically crying over it, saying nobody understands him. Well, Leman Russ is the same way. He may be misunderstood. He may be viewed as a braggart. He may be viewed as belligerent. He may be viewed as a lot of things, but at the same time, he has been written as such. So, when I hear people defend the actions of Russ, it really, for me, it's like, stop being such a fanboy of him. He brought all of this on himself. He was the one of the worst things I read in the entirety of the Horus Heresy is when he found out that it was Horus that had tricked him into going not to arrest Magnus, but to kill him. He wasn't pissed off about the fact, he wasn't angry or upset or, irritated about the fact that he had wiped out a loyalist legion and destroyed a loyalist world, probably one of the most loyal. He was upset that somebody had gotten the better of him. And there's only so many times that you can see Leman Russ do something absolutely garbage heap and continue to excuse it. Just like, no matter what, on the complete mirror side of it, Magnus didn't intend to do anything wrong. Truthfully, he didn't intend to do anything wrong, but yet he did. So that's why Magnus did nothing wrong is a meme, but for some reason people still defend Russ, and I don't understand why. And it's not that I don't like Leman Russ as a Primarch, I just don't like all the obliviousness that comes with people and him. He screwed up in multiple ways. His legion was viewed as being a bunch of braggarts and a bunch of bullies, and that fight outside the library was completely caused by Leman's legion. It was completely caused by the Space Wolves because they were so used to pushing everyone around and getting away with it that when somebody stepped up after they had literally started the fight, they literally started the damn fight. That's when it became a problem. I'm sorry, I have nothing for this. People need to stop defending Lehman, stop defending his actions, stop making him appear to be some grand strategist. He got murked in all ways, and he did it to himself. He is quite literally flannel guy at any college party that drinks too much, wants to start a fight with everybody, and then goes and listens to sad songs when things go wrong, and isn't sad for the right reasons. That one passage sealed it for me with Lehman Russ. And it's kind of like, Lehman Russ is kind of like Abaddon in that regard. You cannot tell me on one hand that he's this master strategist when he continuously screws up. Constantly. Rant over. And like I said, I don't dislike him as a Primarch. I really, really don't. I dislike the cult of personality around him.
It would fall on deaf ears. The intention from Russ was there. The relationship between the brothers has always been a hard one to define. Hate is just far too simple a word. For we've seen
it's one-sided hate. That's the thing.
There is more beyond that. And it's within the pages of the novel Battle of the Fang by author Chris Wright that we get to see a post-heresy Magnus reflecting on his brother Russ.
See, that's the thing. In the heresy, it was a one-sided thing. It was completely one-sided. I'm going to stop ranting. Magnus has every reason to hate Russ now, because while Magnus screwed up, Lehman Russ proved himself to be every bit of everything that Magnus ever thought that he was. Just saying.
For those that aren't aware, the Battle of the Fang takes place barely a couple of centuries after the heresy. So it's still a time far closer to that hallowed past than the current era. However, even then, the Imperium had radically changed. The Primarchs were gone, and the steady slide into darkness had begun for the Imperium. The Golden Age was truly gone.
What Golden Age?
For Magnus and the Sons of Russ. That hatred, that desire to finish what remained undone, still burned. Hence Magnus's invasion of Fenris. Now, I've been in the mood for talking a little Bjorn the Fell-Handed lately, so maybe we'll dive in depth to the events of the Battle of the Fang another day. But Magnus is obviously no fool, and he ensured the bulk of the Space Wolves chapter would not be present for his invasion, leaving just one great company to defend the Fang. However, Magnus himself couldn't descend to the fortress monastery until its protective walls had been destroyed. And it's as he was waiting above the world upon his vessel, we got a glimpse of how his opinion of the wolves had evolved. In being told the Space Wolves are putting up a fierce resistance, and that it may be several more days until he can descend to the battle, Magnus replied, "They're still fighting? Impressive. Though perhaps I should not be surprised. It is their expertise after all. I no longer think of them as animals' armors, though I once did. I now think of them as the purest of us all. Incorruptible, single-minded. The perfection of my father's vision."
Right.
Temek looked up at his Primarch, taken aback. "You admire them?" "Admire them? Of course I do. They are unique. And even in an infinite universe, that quality is rarer than you might suppose." Now this almost feels more like the Great Crusade era Magnus than the demon Primarch he has become. It's really surprising to me to see such a glimpse behind the bitterness, to see this admission of, dare I say, as Magnus did, admiration. I've always felt the wolves were made specifically for a purpose, that there was a very real reason Russ was the Emperor's executioner. Why the Emperor trusted him so implicitly. That somehow he knew that Russ would never turn. And I've mentioned before how I feel the wolves seemingly have an anti-warp nature, a specialism if you will. And it feels like here that Magnus has almost come to think the same way himself. I now think of them as the purest of us all, incorruptible, single-minded, the perfection of my father's vision. That's pretty high praise coming from someone that despises Russ so much. Sure, the description may be masked as loyal lapdogs more often than not, but as we've seen from the Imperium's history, loyalty is a precious commodity.
It is.
To have one that you can never doubt, no matter what, that's a valuable resource indeed.
True.
Perhaps in being just those few centuries removed from the heresy, there was still that part of the old Magnus that he hadn't been completely consumed by chaos just yet. Not quite lost to being that out-and-out villain we would see in the future. However, later, once finally able to join his son's assault within the depths of the Fang, Magnus's wrath was absolute, laying waste to anyone who stood before him. And it's during this encounter he comes before a gargantuan statue of Russ. Admitting it's a particularly good likeness, Magnus grew himself in stature to look his brother eye to eye. No pun intended there, Magnus. And here we got another insight revealed as he spoke to his brother. Do you remember what you said to me as we fought before the Pyramid of Photep? Do you remember the words you used? I do. As I recall, your face was tortured. Imagine that. The master of wolves, his ferocity twisted into grief. And yet you still carried out your duty. You always did what was asked of you. So loyal, so tenacious. Truly, you were the attack dog of the Emperor. Magnus lost his smile. You took no pleasure in what you did. I knew that then, and I know it now. But all things change, my brother. I'm not the same as I was, and you're... well, let us not mention where you are now.
Yeah.
It's quite rare to be given Magnus truly reflecting on the encounter with Russ. Even more so here, to see that revelation of the conflict within the Wolf King. That's for all the rage and anger of their fight, truly fighting to the death. Magnus could still see the angst within his brother. Something I doubt no other witness could. And again, you get that impression of a reluctant admiration. You always did what was asked of you. So loyal, so tenacious. Truly you were the attack dog of the Emperor. How different things could have been if Magnus and Russ could have just put their differences aside.
How different things would have been if Leman Russ could have put his differences aside. It was one-sided as hell. Like, flat out. I don't know what people expected Magnus to do in the face of the disrespect that was constantly heaped on him by Russ, but whatever.
They hadn't left that rivalry fester from the days of the Great Crusade. How many other brothers could have learnt the same lesson? Rogel and Perturabo, Gilliman and Lorgar. If they all could have just put their differences aside. If they were all raised together on Terra, beneath their father's guidance. For Magnus and Russ, they were just too instinctively different. Russ was made to act. Magnus to question. Magnus would rip the statue of his brother from the wall, symbolically smashing its back over his knee, a dark mirror to Prospero. The difference here rather than then is that Magnus continues to tell his brother he will take pleasure in the destruction of Russ's home, the scattering of his sons. Whereas Russ may have not enjoyed his duty, Magnus would. For all Magnus's vaunted knowledge, his claims of superiority, it's clear that base instinctive desire of revenge, no matter what Magnus may say, is there, motivating it all.
It's not really surprising, considering. It really isn't surprising.
Stoking those fires. And as Magnus stands there smiling defiantly at the ruined statue of his brother, there's perhaps the most telling insight of all, as we're told how perhaps Ahriman alone would have been able to see the truth behind his Primarch's smile, to the pain it masks. Magnus is lost to chaos, his soul now given to Tzeentch. But no matter how far from his former self he may have fallen, would continue to fall, there will always be that tiniest trace of the Primarch that was. As we would see Mortarion react almost 10,000 years later to the possibility of being face to face with his father, the Primarchs will never be able to escape their past. They will never be able to eradicate it. It will always define them, no matter how much they claim otherwise. For Magnus, those scars will always remain. He will never be able to eradicate them, try as he might. The pain behind Magnus's smile is most likely a combination of everything. The recollection of losing to Russ, the loss of his home, the chastisement by his father, and most likely, regret that he and Russ let it all come to this. For all the great insights into Magnus we've had, these few brief passages for me were some of the most insightful. Seeing how he has evolved in his feelings and recollections as the years have passed, but also how it still defines him entirely. Destiny and fate are a strange concept within the grim-dark universe, something more akin to the dark powers of chaos. However, for me, it really feels like these two brothers will come face to face one more time. That the Wolf King Leman Russ and his brother Magnus the Red will speak again before it's all said and done. But as always everyone, what do you think? Why do you feel that Magnus has come to change his opinion of the Space Wolves chapter?
He hasn't.
Why do you feel that he's now come to admire them in a way, rather than simply writing them off as animals? What do you feel changed Magnus's opinion? And are you surprised to see it come from the chaos-elevated Primarch? When it comes to his brother Russ, do you feel he is all consumed by hatred? Or that somewhere, no matter how small it may be, there's still that part of the Primarch that laments the loss of his brother's relationship? That he knows if the two could have just set their differences aside, that it all may never have come to this. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers. Your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. With that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.
Okay. So, the one thing that has irritated me the most about the Horus Heresy is how the writers seem to change their minds so much on who and what and why. But from the earliest time that we see the two of them together, Magnus and Russ, it's always a one-sided thing from Russ to Magnus. It's been that consistently. It's hypocritical. And the thing about it is, for me, I sit there and I read this, and I listen to this, and I read the books as well. And for me, like every single step of the way, Russ antagonized his brothers. There wasn't a single time Russ didn't antagonize his brothers. It'd be nice if people actually acknowledged it instead of like, oh well, this was a master stratagem, blah 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 blah. No, was not a master stratagem. I just wish people would stop making excuses and stop making 4D chess examples. Within the first couple of the first real encounter between Space Wolves and Thousand Suns that we see as far as the Horus Heresy went was the Space Wolves legitimately talking to Magnus like he wasn't nothing and trying to order him around. Which, for me, it's like, who the hell do you think you are? And at every single turn, they do nothing but reinforce that. They do nothing but reinforce this kind of, we're going to piss on everybody because who's going to say anything to us? It got to the point where I just did not want to see the Space Wolves in any book that I read because I was so fed up with it. The only time I actually enjoyed seeing them in a book was when they landed on Macragge and protected Gilliman's adoptive mother against Conrad Kurz. That was the only time I really enjoyed seeing them because that's the Space Wolves that I know from 40K. And the way that they would act in 40K during that one particular scene where they literally went into the gaping maw of hell just to basically save a life and try to take Kurz out. But in every single other encounter, it's just like, oh my god. It's like Gilliman and the Lion are meeting. Space Wolves come up. Let me interrupt this big meeting that's happening in front of the entire population of Macragge just to, fling my dick on the table. And because your daddy knocked out my daddy and my honor demands I, try to take an axe to you over it. And once you punch me in the face, it's settled. It's that kind of stuff that really annoys me. It's not unique. It's annoying to me. And they did this towards the Thousand Suns, just like they did to everybody else. And the whole thing that happened between the two of them in front of the library was just literally Leman Russ saying, go and burn down the library, even though Magnus had said he wanted to keep the library intact. I don't remember if that was a xenospecies or a human civilization that they were at. I think I remember being a human civilization. I could definitely be wrong about that. But once more, the Space Wolves, the Thousand Suns are, around the library, protecting the library, and the Space Wolves come up like they're going to literally start chopping through them. And suddenly Magnus' sons defend themselves, and suddenly it's a massive problem, and it's Magnus' fault. No, it's Leman Russ's fault. It's Leman Russ's fault for literally taking his dick out and flopping it on the table and daring anybody to say anything about it. Over and over and over again, he does this throughout the Great Crusade. Now, just be honest about it. Stop making excuses. This is what happened. I'd be a much bigger Space Wolf fan in 30K if people would stop making excuses for him. Rant off. Damn. Any case, I do disagree with his stance towards their rivalry when, from my point of view, it's like Lehman did all this stuff to himself. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know. He might have read something into something else that I didn't read into anything at all. But that's neither here nor there. I agree with a lot of things. My method of theory crafting is based off a whole different set of scenarios and things like that. It just really is what it is. Lord Rho is great at theory crafting. I disagree with him on this one in particular, primarily because of just that whole thing with the Space Wolves and the never-ending bullshittery there. Aside from that, all of Lord Rho's links are going to be in the description down below. I highly recommend you guys go check him out. He really does expand on topics in the lore. In fact, let me bring this up right here. The one on the left right there, I already know what he's going to be talking about there, and it's going to be from Alfarius' book and probably about 2 or 3 other sources in the Primarch's books. Alfarius was not the first one. Alfarius was... It's funny, Horus was always considered the first found, but he wasn't the first found. It was Alfarius. If you didn't know that, surprise! In any case, guys, I will catch you next time. Check the links below from Lord Rho's links, as well as my own, and I will catch you guys next time. I gotta stop ranting.